My name is Bill Streeter, and I'm the director of the Delaware Valley Raptor Center, a nonprofit birds of prey education center in Milford, Pennsylvania. A few days ago, we videoed a live raptor program which will start in a minute. But first, let me give you a brief introduction. For 33 years, we have been rehabilitating sick and injured hawks, falcons, owls, and eagles while doing thousands of education programs. Although we recently stopped rehabbing, our center still serves as a sanctuary for more than 24 unreleasable birds of prey, and we continue to do live raptor public education programs, or at least we did until COVID-19. Understandably, schools, libraries, and other groups aren't scheduling programs while the virus is at large. So we decided to video an outdoor socially distanced program for a few people we had invited. If you're a teacher, feel free to share it with your students and other teachers. Everyone else, please watch and share with whomever you like. We hope the video will inspire you to Google Delaware Valley Raptor Center, go to the website dvrconline.org, and donate any amount you can afford. Unfortunately, most of the funding needed to support the birds at our center came from the 150 programs we conducted yearly, and that's now gone for the foreseeable future. So, like PBS, the programming is free, but we really want you to help us out anyway. Like all of you, we are just trying to survive the virus and not be forced to shut down after 3 successful decades. There is some sporadic wind noise in the video, but it gets better as the program progresses. So thanks in advance, and I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for coming out, everybody. My name is Bill Streeter. I run an organization called the Delaware Valley Raptor Center, and I'm going to be talking to you about birds of prey today. Birds of prey are hawks, falcons, owls, eagles, vultures. I don't have any vultures with me, although you'll probably see some flying above us throughout the day. I do have a hawk, 2 falcons, 2 owls, and a young bald eagle that you will be seeing. All the birds that are here have been birds that have come to our center, and they're not releasable anymore. So those are the birds that we use for education programs. Birds of prey, raptors, hawks, falcons, owls, eagles have a few things in common. They all have incredible eyesight. They have a hooked beak, which they use to tear up their food, and they have really big feet for their size with long, curved, sharp, grasping talons, really strong feet. This is Chester. He's the size of a blue jay, but doesn't have blue jay feet. He does have falcon feet. He is a falcon. He's called an American kestrel. Kestrels are the smallest falcons in North America, the second smallest true falcons in the entire world, so he won't get larger than this. But most falcons are larger than kestrels, and in this country, we have others. We have merlins, prairie falcons, peregrine falcons, aplomato falcons. We have the largest falcons in the world. They live in the Arctic, and they're called gyr falcons. We used to have a gyr falcon here at our center. She weighed over 4 pounds, and she had almost a 5-foot wingspan. This bird weighs 4 ounces with less than a 2-foot wingspan, and that's the difference between the smallest and the largest falcons on the continent. The falcon, he's different. From hawks, from owls, from eagles, you will see the differences when the other birds come out. All falcons of the world, except for one species, have dark brown eyes. So does Chester. And above each eye, the feathers shelf out, forming what's called a brow ridge. And brow ridges in falcons will act to shade out their eyes a little bit, but not a whole lot. Not like a hawk, not like an eagle. And you're going to see the difference. Because when the hawk comes out, you'll see a bird with this huge brow ridge, eye almost buried in her head, but it gives the hawk a slightly different looking appearance. Falcons have smaller brow ridges. Falcons have shorter faces, and it gives them a relatively sweet, pretty, expressive, almost a cute look about them. Hawks and eagles look angry all the time. Heavy ridge above the eye. Hawks look really fierce. Falcons look mildly annoyed at you. Below each eye, you see a black stripe. It's called a malistripe. It's called a mustache. Most falcons worldwide have some type of dark facial pattern underneath their eye. And it acts the same way as a black grease or tape baseball or football players put here. It has a tendency to take the glare of the sun off of his eyes onto his cheeks. And if you think about it, here's a bird without a great ridge to shade out his eye. But he's got something else to deal with the exact same problem. That is called an adaptation. An adaptation is any feature an animal possesses, enabling them to survive better. And all these things I'm talking to you about are Chester survival adaptations. The falcons are actually most noted for their wings. Had he not been injured, his wings could crisscross at an X behind his back, but still, you can see the outline of each individual flight feathers lined up one behind the other, and that's because his wings are long and they're pointed, and it is what makes him built for speed. Because falcons are fast, acrobatic, and maneuverable in the air. Look at other birds built for speed and maneuverability, and you might see the same body form. Pointing wings and a lot of fast-flying birds. Barn swallows, ducks, chimney swifts, pigeons most people take for granted. Watch them fly. I was doing 50 miles an hour in my car one day when a pigeon flew up beside me, looked inside, checked me out, passed me down the road. Pigeons cruising at 60. You want to catch a neat one? Fly faster than 60 miles an hour. This little bird can fly that fast, but he seldom has to catch his food. Kestrels are primarily mouse eaters in the Northeast, insects when they're available, seasonally like grasshoppers and dragonflies, occasionally other birds, but more often than not, kestrels are ground feeders rather than air feeders, and that is not true with most falcons. And remember what I told you. Most falcons in the world are larger than kestrels, and they're built for speed with this particular body form because it adapts them to catch the fastest animals in the world, which are other birds. Most falcons worldwide are bird eaters. Chester was found in somebody's backyard. He had 2 broken wings, 4 broken bones in total. So under the circumstances, we did a really good job with him because Chester flies today, and he flies well. But he doesn't fly perfectly. He has trouble gaining altitude at a steep angle because of a minor rotation problem at his right wrist, but that's all it takes. You have to be perfect in order to survive in the wild. Kestrels are our most common falcon. They range all over North America. They like farm fields, wide open country, and they have a great behavior. All falcons in the world, when they get excited, bob their heads up and down. Now, he seldom does this in public, but sometimes I can manufacture it for you. Apparently not today. They also wag their tails up and down at the same time. You see a little bird perched vertically by the side of the road over an open field, bobbing his head, wagging his tail, stripe underneath the eye. That's the one you're looking at. They look larger when they're flying than they do close up. They can stop and hover over a field just like a helicopter. Chester is a male, so he is two-toned. He has blue-gray wings and a solid color, rusty tail. If you look at his upper back feathers, the black and the brown stripes, females look like that across their wings and throughout to the base of their tail. This next bird is going to be noisy at first, and then she usually quiets down. Some of you may have been unfamiliar with American kestrels. I bet you most of you have heard of peregrine falcons. Peregrines are certainly one of the more well-known birds in the world, which you might not have known, as they're actually the most widely distributed bird in the world. They're found on every continent except for Antarctica, and they live on many oceanic islands as well. They've also been symbols of conservation in this country for well over 60 years. We wiped them out almost in their entirety in the lower 48 states. We killed off every single last peregrine falcon east of the Rocky Mountains, and we did it primarily by using a chemical pesticide called DDT, which, among other things, thinned out their eggshells so badly they couldn't hatch out any young. But DDT was banned in the United States mostly by 1972. Since then, peregrines have been reintroduced back into the East, and they're increasing their numbers dramatically today. This is Sophia. Sophia is a 12-year-old female peregrine falcon. She weighs slightly more than 2 pounds. The male peregrine falcon stands a head shorter, weighs only 1.5 pounds. And that's because female birds of prey, they're bigger, they're stronger, and they totally dominate males throughout their lives. They mate for life and mama rules. She's got the size, she's got the power, she controls all the action around the nest site, she's much more intimidating, and she's got much bigger feet. But male and female alike, both capable of killing a 6-pound sage grouse. That's a bird 3 to 4 times your own size. Most predators don't go after prey animals that much larger than they are. This is how she does it. Peregrine falcons nest on cliffs near water. They've been doing this on the earth for millions of years, and they're doing it today still. But today, peregrines are also nesting in and around cities, buildings, bridges, artificial man-made cliffs, usually near water. Water is a great place for their food to be. Other birds, any bird flying across a major body of water, well, it's wide out in the open without any cover. And a peregrine sees a duck coming from a mile away. Just one thing, duck's not seeing that far. Duck's flying across the river, falcon sees it coming way in the distance and gets ready. Jumps off the cliff, pumps her wings, circles up so high in the sky. By the time the duck passes underneath the falcon, the peregrine disappears more than 1,000 feet above the duck, And she waits. Hangs up in the air. She wants the duck to leave the water, fly over land. Falcon looks down, takes a couple of quick flaps of her wings, folds her wings straight back into her body, and she goes into one of the most outrageous acts you would ever witness in the natural world, and that is called stoop. Stoop of the peregrine falcon stoop. Head first power dive by an absolute perfect bird, blue-gray in color, wings pointing out the back, free falling towards the earth, sometimes twisting and turning on the way down, straight down, absolute total control somewhere around 200 miles an hour. It's the fastest animal in the world. So I would guess if any of you have ever traveled at 200 miles an hour, you've been stuck inside an airplane, so you're not feeling it then. You want to feel 200 miles an hour in your face? Go to Indianapolis, hop in a race car. Puts your foot off the ground, foot away from the straightaway wall. You're zooming down the straightaway, 200 miles an hour, and now you know what it feels like, and now you have the sense of speed. And it feels real scary at first, but hey, 3 or 4 laps later, you're getting used to the speed. You're not scared anymore, have a little bit more fun with it. By the 10th lap, it's just not a problem at all. 200 miles an hour, one of the great thrills of your lifetime. Great, feeling really confident. Try one more thing. Down the straightaway, in your race car, one more time, 200 miles an hour. Reach out of your car and grab the next bird that goes flying by. Imagine how good your hand-eye coordination would be for you to do that. And imagine the absolute perfection of a bird that can not only dive through the air that fast, it takes out other birds along the way. Or imagine somebody sneaking up behind you with a pillow weighing 1.5 to 2 pounds, winding up and slamming you in the back of the head with it at 200 miles an hour, because effectively, that's how a peregrine kills a grouse 3 to 4 times her own size. Huge, long-toed, bird-catching feet, sharp talons. She'll take out another bird in the blink of an eye, an explosion of feathers. Strike doesn't kill the grouse midair, fall might. Fall doesn't, peregrine will, by biting at the neck with a very specialized double-hooked beak that only the falcons and the raptors have. She has a big outside hook and a tiny inner hook, which fits perfectly in a groove notched out of the end of her lower beak. Falcons kill by snapping the necks of their prey with this very specialized weapon. Hawks and eagles don't have beaks shaped that way. They seldom kill with their beaks. They almost always kill with their feet. If I'm working with an injured hawk, she'll foot me. If I'm working with an injured falcon, she'll bite me. And foot me, falcons do both. Sounds like nasty stuff. Tough way to make a living, though. As many as 7 out of 10 die before they're a year old. They're not good enough to compete with the adults, and they starve their first winter. They're orphaned, they're shot illegally, they're hit by cars, they're captured by the predators. Sophia was hit by a car. She broke her left wing, which healed perfectly. But if you were very observant, you may notice that she never ever opens up. You're really enjoying this wind today, aren't you? She never opens up. She never opens up her left foot. That's because she probably has nerve damage that extend to her tendons, and her extensor tendons are now unable to open up. Her flexor tendons on the bottom side of their foot work fine. So if I actually extend her toes, she closes her foot. But once her foot is closed, she can't open it again, and that's why I have her. We are finding more and more nesting peregrine falcon sites in the Northeast every single year. It's very exciting times if you're into watching peregrine falcons. Yeah, I know. I know. Here you go. Ready to go, old girl? Come on. It's not a falcon, it's a hawk. One of the largest, one of the most common hawks in North America. Her name is Icana. She is called a red-tailed hawk. And she's called a red-tail because of her tail, which really isn't red at all. It's kind of a rusty color. But when the sun shines through it from a distance, it looks orange or light orange from the underside. See a red tail out there? The first thing you notice is you're looking at a really large, wide-winged, blocky bird. A 4-foot wingspan for a big female, which is what she is. Notice she's quite light underneath, except for these darker striped feathers across there called the belly band. And from a distance, it shows up as this wide horizontal band across her chest, and it's one of her other major field marks for identification besides the solid colored tail of the adult. But so much for her plumage. Take a very close look at her feet. And I have an enlarged picture of a red-tailed foot up front. Her feet are huge for her size. Her talons are curved, and they're sharp, and her foot is so strong, if she sticks it in my arm, I'm not strong enough to release her grip to remove her foot. She doesn't feel like letting go. She weighs a little bit more than 3 pounds. You'd expect me to be able to wrestle the foot of a 3-pound bird from my arm. Can't do it, can tell you from experience. I am also a falconer. A falconer is someone who can train, fly, and hunt with birds of prey. I lost my first falconry red-tailed hawk about 6 years ago. She lived to be 34 years old. When she was 2, she took her left foot, put it through my T-shirt, into the flesh of my stomach, clamped down right there, didn't let go. So I took 2 fingers, put it underneath her foot, and gradually started to work her foot away. And that worked fine for about 2 seconds. Hawk says, oh yeah, now try it. Crunch. And I'm wising up in a hurry, because if I keep pulling on her foot, it would be like trying to remove a very large fish hook by grabbing it and tearing it away, and nobody's going to do that. My scream for your wife worked for me. And she saw what was happening, and she came into the room with one of these. This is called a hood. Hoods were invented 2,000 years ago by Arab falconers in the Middle East, brought back to Europe during the Crusades of the Middle Ages. And it's not only a great invention if you're a falconer, it's a vital piece of equipment if you're a rehabilitator, because a hood slips over the head of a hawk or a falcon or an eagle and it takes their eyesight away. And a hawk that cannot see in captivity is much calmer, a lot less stressed. I get an injured red-tail. She's got a broken wing. She's in a lot of pain. She's petrified of me. What am I going to do? Feel her wing, locate the fracture, restrain her down on an x-ray table, take a couple of radiographs. Well, all this nightmare stuff is happening to the hawk. What she doesn't need is my face a foot and a half in front of her, scaring her even more. You take that away, she becomes calmer. But the biology that explains it is simple, and that would be most of the sensory energy entering inside the brain of a hawk comes right through this one, right through her eyes. You shut off this source of information to her brain, you're effectively shutting off half the brain's activity. So the brain becomes calmer and quieter, so does the hawk, and it's also dark. And behaviorally, what does she learn to do in the dark her entire life? At the very least, she becomes calm. She can't see well enough to fly. And at the very most, she sleeps. How do hawks sleep? Hawks pull up a foot and go to sleep. Works out perfectly, might be the foot shoved in your stomach at the time. She can see 4 to 6 times better than you can see. Part of that would be like you with binoculars magnifying things closer to you. That does not give you a true indication of how well this bird perceives her world, simply because her visual acuity, her sharpness of vision, her ability to distinguish fine detail is much better than yours. So if Nikana could read, she'd read a newspaper headline from a quarter mile away. That's 4 football fields. She can land on the goalpost of a football field and watch a fly land on the other one. No animal in the world sees as well as a hawk or a falcon, except for the eagles. The golden eagle will see a jackrabbit in the desert from 3 miles away. And just to see how important Nikana's vision is, all you really have to do is watch her head, because she seldom keeps it still in any one direction for more than a few seconds at a time. She's constantly glancing around. And she doesn't even see as well as most hawks do, because Nikana's blind in her left eye. She sees pretty well on this side, but she sees nothing at all over here. She was hit by a car, smacked in the head, concussed badly, blinded her left eye, and made famous for a single night. Because 36 years ago, she made the national television news because she had experimental surgery done on her eye at a human hospital. It was unsuccessful, and even though she came to us for further rehab, this is often the case with one-eyed hawks. They fly in their direction to sight. Nikana released free in wide open country, circles to her right. In heavy cover in the woods, she'll slam her left wing on tree branches and other objects she is not adjusted for over there. Rather than risk further injury, we trained her to use for education. One knows more red tails all around you, easy to see. Take a drive down a major interstate highway on a sunny day. Keep your eyes open for a white flash in the dead tree by the side of the road. Sun glows light off the belly of the hawk. You can see it from a quarter mile easily. Looks like somebody took a hand towel, tossed it up into a roadside tree, or a light post that hangs above an intersection. That's it. They like to perch on those. They like dead trees, no leaves in front of their face. They like interstate highways. Grassy median barriers separating the roads are loaded with mice, and ground predators don't feel like crossing 65-mile-an-hour traffic to go catch a mouse. Hawks don't care. Over the cars, grab the mice back in the exact same trees day after day. And all you have to do is pick up on the white flash in the tree. And you will, starting this afternoon, whether you're looking for it or not, because I just buried that thought inside your brains today. Or Go on a hawk watch. September, October, November, hawks are migrating north to south. Where do we live? Smack in the middle of the northeastern flyway. Find yourself a windy mountain ridge with a known hawk watch lookout on a good day at a good site. You can see anywhere from 50 to a few thousand hawks fly by right above your head. Free show. And it doesn't happen like this in every state in the United States. We're fortunate to live along one of the major hawk flyways of the world. Migration starts late August. It ends early December. It gets good around the first week of September or so. Want to know where to go? Website put out by the Hawk Migration Association of North America, hmana.org. Go on your website, go on the website, click on your state, and it'll tell you all the major hawk watches in the area. Closest one around here is Sunrise Mountain in Branchville, New Jersey. Next bird you're going to see is an owl. It's the primary flight feather of a red-tailed hawk. This is the primary flight feather of a barred owl. It's the way a hawk feather sounds when you flap it up and down. Normally you don't have to do it very hard at all. Can if you want to. This is the owl feather. That's the difference between a hawk feather and an owl feather. Tougher to hear the owl fly. Owl on my fist, held back by Jess, is beating a whole lot of wind, not allowed to go anywhere. You're going to hear some flapping. You'll also hear if the owl hits its wings against my arm. But if I would set him free, he'd whisper through the air, and it's basically because owl feathers are softer and much more velvety textured than hawk feathers, which are slightly stiffer. Owl feathers are structured differently. Tiny, fine, ragged, comb-like edges along the trailing edge of the primaries, whereas the hawks are perfectly smooth. And even the leading edge of the first few of the very small primary is fringed. All these feather properties break up the wind well enough that makes them difficult to hear fly. It's a great adaptation for any predator in the world to be silent, but it's better if you hunt at night, because your prey animals aren't depending on their eyes to get away as often as they will their other senses, primarily their ears. So owls don't make any noise, they catch a lot more stuff. Owls are so good at catching mice. A pair of owls with babies to feed can bring back 30 mice a night to the nest without too much of a problem. Might be important to think about this. Great horned owl, one of the largest, most powerful owls in North America. Big female, stands that tall, can have up to a 5-foot wingspan, and can weigh as much as 4 pounds. When she's born, size of the egg, little white ball of fluff, one day old, this big. She'll grow from this size in her first day to that size with up to a 5-foot wingspan, less than 8 weeks. Imagine how much food babies packing away. Say the parents are stuck feeding 3 or 4 of these baby eating machines all at the same time. They have to be outstanding predators. Now, this next bird flies for me off the fist more often than the other birds do. When a bird tries to fly off your fist, it's called baiting, B-A-T-I-N-G. The act itself is called a bait, B-A-T-E. He will bait, but he always gets back on my glove pretty quickly thereafter. This is Harley. Harley is a little male great horned owl. Remember what I told you earlier? I told you the females are quite a bit larger. He's a little male. He is called a great horned owl because of these tufts of feathers right here resembling horns. They're actually structures called plumicorns, and they serve as a visual signal to other owls. If Harley is really upset, they're straight up in the air. If he's more relaxed or subdued, he brings them off to the sides a bit. Owls are always blacks and whites and browns and grays and tans. They're never brightly colored. They are built for camouflage. Most owls resemble tree bark because it is to their great advantage to disappear during the day. Why? They're harassed every single day by crows and by songbirds. Crows and songbirds see owls, they won't leave them alone. They mob them, they dive bomb them, they peck at them. They want to chase the owl away. They don't want the owl to be around come nightfall when the owl's a super threat. The owl wants to rest during the day. What's he going to do? Perch next to a tree trunk, elongate his body, close these huge eyes into tiny slits, take his plumicorn, stick them straight up into the air, blend right into the bark to disappear. So find the owl in the picture, and as soon as you find him, notice his behavior. Notice that his eyes are closed. Notice that his plumicorns are sticking straight up. And realize how difficult it might be to notice this bird at all as long as he stays motionless. A friend of mine took this picture in the woods. Then he got closer and he took it from a different angle and blew it up. And on the flip side, from this angle, you can more easily notice a screech owl sitting in the hole of the cherry tree. From this angle, it's not quite as noticeable, but even this from a distance is not something a predator would be very likely to pick up on. But so much for his plumage. You're much too busy staring at his face instead. Owls don't look like other birds. Most birds have narrow heads with eyes on either side of their head. Owls look like you do. Big, flat, pushed-in faces. Two eyes facing forward. Same direction, same plane. But look at the size of his eyes compared to the size of his head. Because here's a bird that actually has eyes larger than yours, yet his head is much smaller than yours. And if you think he has a big head, it's not even as large as it looks. Because Harley is fluffy. He's feathers in air. He's a decent-sized owl in a puffy down jacket, weighing a little bit more than 3 pounds, the same as a female red-tail. His body up to his neck is only 9 inches long, and his skull underneath all these fluffy feathers is a little bit larger than a golf ball. So pop your eyes out of your head and stuff them inside one of these. Any room left over, squeeze your brain inside. Because Harley's eye is larger than the size of his entire brain. Owls aren't wise at all. Yet they're so very successful, they're everywhere except for Antarctica, and it's not because they're Einsteins. Getting back to our own eyes, we have round spherical eyes. They rotate in our sockets quite easily. An owl has what's called a tubular eye. It is shaped like a doorknob or a bell lying on its side, and all you see is the colored part. You see only the yellow. You see only the top of the bell. What you don't see is the tube that goes in the head. What you don't see is the largest part of the eye itself, which is this huge flare which fills out that back cavity of the skull. If your eye was shaped this way, bound by a ring of bone to hold it in place, you'd have trouble moving it. So what does he do? He moves his head. And he moves his head a whole lot better than you move yours. So if Harley wants to look at the sheds over there, he can glance over his left shoulder, or he can glance over his right shoulder, totally behind him, all the way around, and then over his left, because in one direction, he gets close to 3/4 of the way around. Now he's over there. He can now go 3/4 of the way back, past the starting point, and continue to move 3/4 of the way around the other way. So from stretch to stretch, you're actually looking at a bird who can rotate his head very close to 1.5 times around. What can we do from stretch to stretch? Not even half a time, from there to there. And the reason he does so much better than you do, he's got 7 extra vertebrae in his neck. It gives him first a longer neck. It gives him second more pieces to turn. Those two things give you flexibility. And if you've ever seen a gold chain, where all the links in the chain are S-shaped like that, and the chain flexes along the curve of the links, that's the way a bird neck is structured. Bird neck vertebrae articulate on a curve. Humans are flat like building blocks, and I wasn't kidding when I told you his body's 9 inches long. We have these 3 big bones that meet in our chest. Up here you can grab them. They're called your clavicles or your collarbones. Center bone bisects your rib cage. It's called the sternum. Sternum meets the clavicles in this V-notch depression that you can feel at the top of your chest. This is where your chest ends. This is where your neck begins. This is where it is on me. Tip of my sternum right there. That's his. Everything above my finger, neck and head. Everything below my finger, chest and body. But his neck starts there. My thumb and forefinger can touch behind his head. He has no trouble moving his head when I do that. And he can do one other thing which might interest you. If Harley decides to focus on you, it doesn't particularly matter what I do to his body, because he can keep his head fixed in space wherever he wants it to be, regardless of his body motion. So it can be a windy day, and the tree's going back and forth, and the owl's body is swinging back and forth, but the owl's head is totally fixed in space, not moving at all. It's a real cool trick, and owls are good at it. But late at night in the dark, you're going to lose 2 things. First thing, color vision. Without artificial light, to us, at night, everything looks gray to black. Most owls don't see colors well. Even during the day, their eyes aren't structured for it. But the second thing you lose, he does not. That is also called your visual acuity. We don't see sharply at night. We see fuzzy, shadowy outlines in the dark. We lose our ability to distinguish fine detail in low light. Harley sees so well in the dark. Place him in a Major League Baseball stadium, dome it up. No light gets through. It's totally black. You can't see the hand in front of your face. Well, he can't either. No animal in the world, not even an owl, sees in the absence of all light. He's real hungry, though. There's a mouse out in center field. He's in the stands behind home plate. Want to see the mouse? Light a candle and place it on second base, because a single candle will illuminate an entire baseball stadium with enough light for an owl to see a mouse in the outfield. You want to make it tougher for him? Blow it out. Pitch black again, can't see anything. Mouse starts to walk across the outfield, so he'll catch it anyway. because he hears mouse footsteps in the outfield grass. But not only can he hear a mouse walking way out there somewhere, he'll pinpoint it exactly by sound alone. Baseball stadium is made up of 20 million square inches, and a mouse is on one, so Harley flies to, stops over, picks out 1 square inch out of 20 million, perfect accuracy, drops his feet, contracts his talons, grabs the mouse while it's moving, flies away with it without seeing it at all. How do you think winter owls hunt? You think the local owls wait for mice to pop their heads up through the snow and look around every day? They don't have to. They can just slam them right through the snow. And the first time they see what they eat is when they come out of the snow and look on their feet to see what they caught. And you would understand this so much better if you could see his ears. Owls have big, flat, funny faces. One reason is to capture sound. Harley's head shaped this way allows him to hear better, looking at a huge eye in a miniature satellite dish on either side of his head. This is called a facial disc, cup-shaped, and it shuts down the huge crescent-shaped external ear openings, which are defined by these black crescents you see on either side of his head, from there to there, from there to there. If you had the face of an owl, your eyes would be oranges, ears bananas, not much of a brain, and perhaps a very poor sense of smell. Great horned owls capture, kill, and eat skunks all the time. They're big enough and strong enough to kill them. They either can't smell them very well or they just don't care. But 1 out of every 2 or 3 horned owls coming into our center smells like a skunk, including him. One of their major food items, one of the few things in the world skunks worry about. Great horned owls, cars, particularly stupid dogs, nothing else will mess with one. Harley was found in somebody's front yard. He was sitting on a tree stump. He was so emaciated, had I chosen to do so, I could have reached out with my thumb and forefinger, grabbed him by the keel of his breastbone, and picked him right up. He was light as a feather. He had metabolized practically all of his flight musculature, and he was that close to dying of starvation. And to bring him back from that state to perfect health under those severe conditions, we're usually successful maybe 1 in 4 times. So Harley really beat serious odds against his survival. Turns out he fractured a bone of his elbow that kind of broke off, and it attached itself when he was on the ground in the wild healing, and the callus occurred throughout the joint, which interferes with complete motion of that joint. So once again, Harley flies. He flies well, but he doesn't fly well enough to go back. Great horned owls live everywhere in the Western Hemisphere. They live in North America, they live in South America, and they're found in almost every habitat. They're in the Arctic, the deserts, the tropics. They'll be flying around here tonight. They're very noisy, and they make themselves known. Owls make noise for a couple main reasons. Reason number 1, this is my territory, get out. Reason number 2, it's mating season. I love you, you love me, back and forth, male to female. Not all owls hoot, great horned owls do. Males hoot low and slow, females hoot high and fast. So if you hear something like, you're hearing male and female back and forth, back and forth. He's panting. He can only cool down by evaporating moisture through his mouth, not through his skin. When owls pant, they flutter their throats. They also waggle their tongues up and down. This is Mojo. Mojo is called a saw-whet owl, S-A-W-W-H-E-T. Saw-whets are the smallest owls in the Northeast, the 3rd smallest owl in North America. He's not a baby, he's fully grown. He's fully grown at slightly less than 3 ounces, an 18-inch wingspan, and a huge head for his size. Look at the size of Mojo's head in proportion to his body. He looks more like a cartoon character. Most owls have yellow eyes. They have white eyebrows. They perch with 2 toes forward, 2 toes behind them. And most owls of the world have feathers on their toes and feet. They don't have scaly, reptilian-looking feet. Mojo was also hit by a car. This is a 3-ounce bird surviving getting whacked by a 3,000-pound machine. Not without some damage, he blinded himself in his left eye. And although it looks pretty good, usually he keeps his left pupil smaller than his right. And if the light hits it perfectly, you can actually see some cloudiness in the lens. Now, whenever we get a head injury, we're going to do an eye exam. The first thing we will do is shine a light. Pupils don't react the same way. Often something's going on neurologically. It might be temporary, it might be permanent, and might not even affect his vision at all. So after that, you look inside the eye. You look for blood and cloudiness and scar tissue and leakage between the chambers and damage to the interior structures. And finally, You take him out, you put him in a flight enclosure, and you observe his flight pattern. Is he always flying in the same direction? Is he always flying clockwise? Is he always flying counterclockwise? If he is, probably only seeing out of one eye. The most remarkable part of Mojo's story? Young couple who found him. Young couple in their 20s driving down a dark, deserted country road. It's the middle of nowhere. It's 8 o'clock at night in December. It's unusually cold. It's already dark. There's snow on the ground. They think they see a movement roadside, so they slow their car down. As they get closer, they see something moving, so they stop and they get out. And sure enough, they find Mojo floundering around the roadside. Snow, scoop him up, take him home. Then they go online to see if they can find help for him, and they found us. So by 9:30 that night, he was transported to the Delaware Valley Raptor Center. Very lucky for him, because he was already in shock. And an animal falls into shock is in serious trouble. So what we have to do is take him out of shock. How do you do that? First, make sure he's warm. Second, introduce fluids into his bloodstream, raising his blood volume and his pressure. Third, you might choose to inject a chemical called a corticosteroid, which has the potential to reduce inflammation in the brain, the brainstem, the spinal cord. Once all that stuff is done, usually they become shock-free. Once they are shock-free, then and only then can you deal with other trauma. He had none. There were no fractured bones. There were no internal injuries. It was just the eye. The eyes wait and see, but it's been 6 years, and he's not seeing out of that eye, and I don't expect him to ever see out of that eye still. Because of a young couple's unselfish act within the past 6 years, close to 150,000 people have seen Mojo. People who may never have been close to a saw-whet before, may never ever have that opportunity again. And just speaking for myself, this little bird happens to be one of the greatest looking animals I've ever seen. They took a few hours out of their day. They managed to help enrich the lives of 150,000 people and counting, even if it's just for 5 minutes. What a wonderful occurrence because of their extremely kind act. If you want to know the absolute truth, it had to be the furthest thing from their minds when they saved it. Because they didn't save Mojo for your sake or for your education or for your entertainment. And they didn't save Mojo for my sake and all the rewards that I get caring for him. They saved Mojo for his sake alone. That's the reason. Stop their car in the middle of nowhere just to find this little bird and help him out. Not all bad news out there. Good news is a young couple driving down in the dark and the cold of December. Stopping their car, getting out, searching down this alley, scoop it up, take them home, find the box, put them in it, look up a phone number, make the call, load them back in the car, haul them to us, doing everything they possibly could to make sure that Mojo survived, and they pulled it off. Had they not stopped that night, he would have died by the side of the road. He was already in shock, and an animal that falls into shock loses the ability to regulate their own body temperature, which is why they always tell you to throw a blanket over a shock victim. We don't get many saw-whets, but when we do, we usually get 1 or 2 in a year, and it's not even every year. It's every like 4 or 5 years or so that we get them. Biggest bird you saw so far, the red tail and the great horned owl were both about the same size, 4-foot wingspan, a little bit more than 3 pounds. Next bird weighs close to 10 pounds. My reach from my feet to my fingertips is 7 feet 3 inches tall. Bird's wingspan is less than that, but probably pretty close to 7 feet. Just to prepare you for this young bald eagle, she's fully flighted, she won't get away, but generally she tries to fly, and hopefully if she does, she'll bait towards you, in which case I can usually just flip her right back up on my fist. If she baits toward me, it's going to be a little bit awkward, but usually she's pretty good at baiting in your direction. I'm going to tell you her story, and then I'm going to bring her out and talk to you about bald eagles in general. In May of 2018, some severe storms came through this area. In Narrowsburg, New York, a tornado touched down and knocked down a lot of trees. And at that time, baby bald eagles were sitting in their nests, and they were about 5 weeks of age. And in one day, we got 4 baby bald eagles plus an adult bald eagle. We went on to get 16 bald eagles for rehab in 2018, the most we've ever received in a single year. 3 of those babies went back into the wild, and then there's Lizzie. Lizzie broke these 2 bones, the radius and the ulna. They connect the wrist to the elbow, and one bone rotates over top of the other. And she broke it fairly close to her wrist. What happens when birds break their bones is the tendons kind of pull them like this. So what we need to have surgery done, we had to stretch it out and kind of align them that way. But here's the problem. When a bird is 5 weeks old, its bones are mostly cartilage, and they ossify, they solidify into solid bone from the inside out, their wings are also less than half their normal adult size. So what we needed to do was have our surgeon place pins through cartilage, through bones, through cartilage again, all allowing room for this wing to grow and expand. And under those conditions, for this bird to go back into the wild after a surgery, extremely slim. It would have been close to miraculous, but you still give it a shot. And what I hoped to achieve, and what I did achieve, was a perfect union and perfect extension. In fact, when she comes out, it's not going to be completely obvious which one of her wings is her bad wing. But what I didn't necessarily anticipate, because we never had surgery done on a bird this young before, at that time in their life, their body is telling them to make bone, biologically saying, put down bone. So she threw out so much callus that she actually fused the radius of the ulna. So she lost some of this, and she lost some of that. Still, she flies the length of her 40-foot flight aviary from one side to the other, but she does it with great difficulty. She certainly couldn't survive in the wild. This is Lizzie. Lizzie is a 2.5-year-old female bald eagles. Bald eagles are called bald eagles not because it looks like they have bald heads. Bald is an Old English word originally spelled B-A-L-D-E, which means white. So a bald eagle is a white-headed eagle, except when it's not. Because when bald eagles are less than 3 years old, their heads are brown, their beaks are mostly black, their bodies are brown and white speckled, and their tails are brown and white speckled. They approach maturity between 3 and 5 years of age, and they gradually change to advertise that fact. Their eyes get lighter in color, their beaks turn yellow, their heads turn white, their bodies turn brown, and their tails turn white. Lizzie is among a group of eagles called the fish eagles or the sea eagles. There are only 11 species of sea eagles in the world. They live everywhere except for Antarctica, and for some reason there are none in South America. Bald eagles are not only the only sea eagle, they're the only eagle, period, that lives only and exclusively in North America. One of the reasons why we chose this bird as our national symbol, they weren't found in Europe, they're only found here. Seagulls have a few things in common. They have enlarged fish-eating beaks, they have bare legs or tarsi, they have relatively short talons, and they have spines or spicules on the bottom of their feet, enabling them to hold on to a very slippery fish. So a typical day for a bald eagle is to just sit in a tree above a lake or a river and wait for a fish to swim to the surface. Then they glide out of the tree. As they approach the water, they drop their legs. When they are above the fish, they snatch it from the surface. One swoop of very long, powerful wings, they're off the water, they've gotten their fish, and the only thing they've had to do to catch that fish is get their feet wet. Bald eagles are extremely good at what they do. It is not that difficult for them to survive if they have good fishing spots. Half the world's bald eagles live in Alaska, the other half live in Canada and the lower 48 states. We used to have 25,000 breeding pairs of bald eagles south of Canada. By the mid-1960s, about 400 pairs remained. Today, we're approaching 10,000 breeding pairs of bald eagles south of Canada. Bald eagles are the wildlife success comeback story of the past 30 years, and they've come back for a number of reasons. Reason number one, we placed them on the federal endangered species list, which protected their habitat. The greatest threat to all wildlife any time in the world is loss of habitat. No place to live, wildlife will disappear and go extinct. They're doing so well that they were delisted years ago under the Clinton administration. What else did we do? We cleaned up water pollution. We take clean water today for granted. But when I was growing up, there were no regulations. There were a lot of pollution, a lot of dead lakes and rivers supporting little to no life, no fish, no food, no eagles. We stopped using DDT, washed into the watersheds, into the fish. Bald eagles ate the fish, and for over 30 years, most bald eagles wouldn't lay an egg with a shell thick enough to hatch out. And finally, we actively reintroduced these birds to where they used to live in the past. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania have all had bald eagle reintroduction projects. They have all been successful. I am native to Pennsylvania. I lived in Massachusetts for 9 years. I returned back to Pennsylvania in 1984. In 1984, there were 2 nesting pairs of bald eagles in the state. Today, we have more than 300 nesting pairs of bald eagles in Pennsylvania. And that, to me, is nothing short of a miracle, because when I was a kid, I have a prayer seeing the bald eagle. You do, your children do, your grandchildren do, because a lot of people went to a lot of work to bring these birds back. Lizzie is still a work in progress. I've been using her for programs for about 2 years. Bald eagles aren't golden eagles. Golden eagles are very calm and relaxed birds. Bald eagles are a little bit crazy, but still I am extremely pleased with the way she is doing today until that car came down the road. Okay, here we go. Come on, baby girl. There you go. There you go. You jump in there. That's all I got for those people that are watching this video. If you enjoyed it, go to dvrconline.org or Google Delaware Valley Raptor Center. Check out what else we have to offer and consider making a donation to our center. Thanks for coming out.